All right, guys, welcome to episode 45 of the podcast. We are well into season 2 now. I think this is the fourth or fifth episode of our season 2. And what's been happening lately? Steven recently committed, I think 2 weeks ago, to start training for a fight that's happening at the end of next month. So he's got another 5 weeks to go, I think. So let's check in on Steven. How's that going? How's your Friday? How was training? How's everything?
Been going good, man. I think next week is the real ramp up. So it's funny because, every day has been completely different, but also just anticipating that next week is going to be another acceleration is interesting, to say the least. But you're like constantly, because I've done this before, it's like not the first time. You have like all these old benchmarks and old cues like coming back in. You're like, oh yeah, I remember that. Oh yeah, my body works that way. Oh wait, yeah, that doesn't work like that. So it's been good. I'm excited. It'll be a good check-in at the end of next week, I think. It'll be significant.
What do you mean by like another ramp up? Like, what does that entail relative to what you're currently doing? Because it did sound like you were doing a lot, in the last 2 weeks already.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So, like in terms of calisthenics, everything just has to be way more explosive and faster, right? You move, for me, there's always a spectrum when it comes to periodization, sport periodization, between like strength and then like explosiveness. And then as you get nearer to competition, you're trying to peak, right, in explosiveness. So there's that dimension. And then also the number of rounds goes up. So, it's just more rounds and less outs. Like we did, for example, Shark Tank yesterday, where when you're a Shark Tank, you're the person in the middle, and every minute a new fresh opponent comes in. And you can never win, obviously, because every minute is someone who's completely fresh, right? So we did 2 rounds of that.
How many minutes does that go for?
One round is 4 minutes.
Oh,
And
nice.
so like 8 fresh opponents basically. But that goes up week by week, and also in the earlier stages, if you kind of gas out or you can't fight your way out of a position as much. Like let's say, 3/4 of the way through it, I'm just completely beaten down, which is the point of the Shark Tank, right? You're not supposed to win. You're not supposed to look good. It's supposed to be gritty. And someone puts you in a really bad position. If you don't like really try your best to fight your way out of it, it's like, okay, there's a little bit of lax, but like as you get closer to the fight, you better like fucking do everything you can to get out of there or you're going to die. Right. So kind of, it gets more serious all across the board. Less tolerance.
That sounds pretty dope. I would not want to do something like that.
Yeah.
What's the most fun stage of I guess like ramping up for a fight? Because I know like I've been watching you do this, but this is probably the first time where I'm like on a week-to-week basis. Hey, what are you doing this week? Hey, what are you doing this week? And obviously, I know there's probably other stages leading into the actual fight. Like, what's the most fun for you? Is it like when you commit and then the first week, or is it like now, or is it like the week leading up to the fight?
Well, by far the most fun is when you're done with your weight cut, because the weight cut is the worst part of all. Like, you're not eating, drinking, or anything. You're going to bed hungry. You're irritable. You have no salt in your body. I'm dropping 15, 17 pounds in 5 days.
What do you weigh now, and what are you fighting at?
I weigh 170 now. I'm going to be fighting at 147, or I have to weigh in at 147 and then I rehydrate back up. So,
what are you going to be fighting at after you rehydrate?
I'm probably going to get back up to 163, 164.
Damn.
Yeah, in 24 hours.
170 down to 147, and then back up to like 160.
Yeah.
Something.
Yeah. Yeah. So that's definitely like the best is the morning of the fight after you've weighed in and you've refueled, and like the world is like super quiet, and it's like it's probably some of the top 5 moments I've been most grateful to be alive. kind of feelings. You're just like, I can't believe that in 12 hours I'm about to go do this thing, right? And I already did 2 months of work, and now it's coming down to 10 minutes in the ring. Like, you know, hours and hours and hours just going down to 10 minutes. So that's definitely the best part, I would say. But that's when the work is all done. So I felt like that wasn't like a real answer. You know, that's like when everything is all like done and you get to fight. But during the camp itself, I think the best feelings are at times where you have a training session where you just get fucking plastered and you're done and you're kind of like driving yourself home, right, at night, and the endorphins are just raging, right? And you're beaten up, but you just feel like proud, you know? You feel like shit, but you feel proud, and you have chemical support via endorphins. So it's crazy.
Damn, I just had a question, but I lost it. And give me like 7 seconds. I think I'll think of it.
Yeah.
All right, it's gone. It's gone, bro. Damn, I really wanted to ask that question too. I was like, yo, I'm gonna ask this question. Has that ever happened to you?
Happens all the time. It happens all the time. Yeah.
All right, whatever. If it's important, it'll come back to me.
Mm-hmm.
Shit, man, I really wanted to ask that question. All right. Next question to transition, I guess. Okay, so let's say this is hypothetical. Let's say you woke up tomorrow and actually, I don't know if I should ask this question in this manner. Seems if you were if you were a trans woman and you were going to participate in Muay Thai, how much of an inherent, like what would that look like? Like, do you feel like you would have an advantage? If so, how much from this point in your life? You'd have to make a transition. I don't know.
I've done really superficial research on this, as we talked about before. And,
kind of setting you up here.
Yeah. So I guess I'll try to summarize things I've read. Like there's different like schools of thought. There's one school of thought which is that if you have gone through male puberty, you have things that will stay with you regardless of transition. Right. So basically, I think everyone kind of all agrees that like in transition, like after you've transitioned, the biological makeup does change like crazy, and there are measurable, like, you know, obviously decreases in certain athleticism things coming from a male body. And I think that's where people that's where people are kind of where it gets controversial. Like, how do you what's the degree of within that, right? And so there's some people that say like, look, if you've gone through male puberty, like bone structure or whatever, there's certain things you can't turn that off. And there's other people that say like, even if you've gone through that and you've transitioned, in your transition state, you like, if you're looking at like biochemical measures like hormones and what have you, then it is more of an equal playing field. And there are at least there is a sample of some, like there's a sample of athletes transitioning over who have like dominated, but there's also ones that have transitioned over and they didn't like completely stomp the competition, right? So I think those are some counter examples, but yeah, I don't know what it's like to take estrogen and what have you. I don't know how that would affect it, but I just want to re-emphasize for the conversation so that we're all on the same page, that the physical differences between men and women are just ridiculous, right? And I've heard this firsthand too from competitors, like women weightlifters, Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu competitors, Muay Thai people. It's just like, as soon as you try to put the two sexes against each other, it's just like not even close, right? And I think we should be like upfront about that. disparity.
Definitely
You know, it's
depends
like
on the
not even
sport too,
close.
right? I mean, obviously, in general, I agree with that with most sports, but it would depend on the sports. Like if it was like, I don't know, I watched the middle ground on this yesterday, um, because I was like,
Is that a what is
it,
that? Is that a show that focuses on?
it's so there's a YouTube channel called Jubilee, and they do
Mm,
these they do a bunch of different types of videos, but some of my favorite ones is they have this thing called middle ground where they get six people, three from one camp and three from another camp, and then they ask a question, and then let's say for so obviously the trans women in sports, like how to handle that has been a debate that's been going on for the last, I think it seems maybe 1 or 2 years or something like that. So this is like a live, like how is society going to handle this type of situation. And so what they do is they have three people that kind of like so in this case they had three trans athletes, and then they had three like just kind of like Division 1 like college athletes that I guess aren't trans, and they would put a statement up, um, something like trans. I'm just making this up, but it would be like trans women should be allowed to compete in any women competition or something like that. And then the people that support that statement would walk forward and sit down, and they'll have a small conversation why they support it. And then after those people are done, having their conversation, the people who don't support it will come in and, give reason why they don't support it. So it's kind of like an open for it. It's usually it usually creates more understanding for both sides. I don't think I've ever seen it devolve into like, something worse than what it started as. Usually it kind of like creates understanding on both sides. So I watched that yesterday, and it was actually kind of cool to see the trans athletes from their perspective, and the I guess like not non-trans athletes discuss their sides.
yeah. So I think it's tough. We should also separate, like, I think policy and societal stuff from some more of the philosophical bits and biological, like scientific bits of trans. I think that would be just good. We don't have to like split it. Just say like, hey, know that these different categories exist. But when you ask, like, depends on the sport, there is something that came to mind for me, and it's a debate that I had in college with my roommate Gray. Like, what do you define a sport, right? Like, is golf a sport? Is esports a sport, right? In esports, you have women competing against men as well. Like, there's no gender restriction. Yeah. What do you think about that?
Yeah, so I was saying, sports is just like this broad category, and of course, like it depends on how you
Mm-hmm.
define it. Some people define it like certain ways and other ways, but clearly not all sports are the same. If you're doing, I don't know, man. What's that sport in the Olympics when they're like brushing the thing and like curling? Is that what it's called?
Curling,
Yeah,
yeah.
like I don't know anything about curling, so I probably shouldn't even be talking. But I would say if I had like men and women probably can I don't know. They probably have men's and women's curling for a reason. I don't know. But I would say that there's less of an advantage that can be gained from, I guess, like a trans woman in that sport than, or even like esports, or let's say like NASCAR, right? Like those
Mm-hmm.
things are sports. I mean, I guess they're on ESPN, counts as sport, maybe, if you're going to count that. Or what about like horse racing or something, right? Where like your body type, a smaller body type, might even be helpful. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of different like things that are sports, but then there's also certain things where it's, let's say Muay Thai, for instance. If you have like longer reach or whatever, I assume that you have some sort of advantage that can't be gained through training. So all things being equal, if a person has like, I don't know, 10% more reach and and they both train the same amount, and same with like basketball, for instance, like if a person, it's like seven, so out of I read this stat a long time ago, and it's crazy to me. So out of all the people that are 7 feet and taller in the U.S., 17% of them play in the NBA.
Yeah.
So it's very clear that there's some sort of correlation to having this body type to be able to do well in this sport. And so I don't know. So I think for me,
The thing is, like, well, this goes back to a conversation we had earlier, right? Which is nature is inherently unfair across the board, as you mentioned, and that's a great thing, right? Our diversity, our differences, is what makes us all very unique and special. And you have tall people, short people, faster people, slower people, stronger people, weaker people, whatever, right? Like everyone has that kind of this one thing, but in order to create an equal playing field within that category, you have to discriminate towards that category so the people in that class can I don't know. That's where we need to fill in the blank, right? What are we optimizing for, right? Are we optimizing for finding the absolute best within this like narrow criteria, or are we optimizing for letting people have a fulfilling experience in sport, right? Which is a really great thing, honestly, right? And I think we should have that too. It's the balance of those two things, right? But it's also balancing like the infinite variables that you could have, whereas height is not a protected class in anything, right? There's no policies around height, like heightism, like all of any of those variables. But biological sex is a protected class, right?
right.
And so that's why we separate those two. And so we're essentially find ourselves in a nature versus nurture paradox, where women, let's just say, for example, women, let's say there's this hypothetical sport in which it is balanced so that men and women can compete as equally as we can make it, right? But for some reason, women, we find out that women actually can't compete, are not competitive with men in that sport, right? Then the question, as the people who put up the game and society at large asks, is, well, is it because, at a young age, we're not encouraging girls to hand-eye coordination activities? Is it like you have to look at this whole system, right? Or is it actually that maybe that there's just some biological disparities? And there are studies that show that in terms of, there are even disparities in hand-eye coordination between men and women, even if even if it's a not physical, a strength-based type of thing, like reaction time, for example. I think men have the edge on. I think the one thing that women are super competitive on, it maybe if even better than men, is Olympic shooting. I think is one that comes out, targets stuff, but I think the speed-based ones, I think men still have the edge. So I don't know. This is all to lay out the considerations. I have, I don't know, but that's what I thought of as you're speaking.
When we were talking, I was thinking that I actually used to play in a basketball league in the area. It's the FABA League. It's a Filipino league, and it's predominantly Asian, but they explicitly, I don't know how explicit it is, but you can't bring non-Asian people on your team. So, for instance, I'm guessing what probably happened at some point, way in the past. So I didn't start playing. This league's been around forever, probably for at least 20 years or more or whatever. I didn't start playing until maybe 6, 7, 8 years ago. But I assume what probably happened was at some point, people probably brought a lot of non-Asians, say Black people that are obviously much better at basketball than Asian people, just through probably not just culture, but their athletic advantage and stuff like that too, like height and things like that. And then so they probably instituted a rule because it's a Filipino league and they want to make it competitive for, I guess, so they allowed Asians, and you could probably bring white people, honestly, and I'm sure they'll let you bring whoever you want if they're not that good. But if you bring like a D2, obvious non-Asian, then they'll probably tell you, hey, yo, you can't You can't have that dude on your team.
But a D2 Asian would be okay.
Yeah, D2 Asian would be okay. So you can bring you can even like and there were like half Asian, like Malaysian people, and that was okay too. But you just couldn't bring so they basically created the rule to make it so that league remains competitive, over time. And the way that the league is set up, I think there's like basketball games all the way down to like the 5, 6, 7-year-old level, and then these kids just play the whole time. And as they grow up, they jump leagues, and eventually get to the adult league. And that was the league I was playing in. And so I think over time it became that. I don't know if, and I don't know if that's accepted or not. It makes sense why they would do something like that. But at the same time, so I guess like going back to like, what you were talking about, why were the rules created in the first place to separate the genders and I don't know. And I guess from that perspective, it doesn't make sense to allow somebody that has, I don't know how much of an advantage it is. It's hard to say because, sports is such a broad category. So I guess it would depend on the sport. Like if we're playing like, I don't know, let's say we're playing like rugby or some shit. And then someone that like, transitioned after male puberty that just naturally had like a bigger frame or like more of a, I guess like a better body for that type of sport. Then maybe you wouldn't allow it because I don't know, there's probably safety issues or something. But at the same time, from the perspective of, this is what I think. I think society has always set it up in a 2-gender system just because this has never been that much of a problem before. So a 2-gender system like kind of made sense based on where we've come from. Now, obviously there's like, there's probably, I don't know, speaking completely, I don't know what I don't know. I assume that now there's probably more trans people, or maybe at least it's more open. This is more of an issue now than it was like 40 years ago, I'm guessing. So now that there's this issue and society hasn't addressed it yet, but the system has been built for like, these 2 genders based on the idea of making it so that like women have a place to compete where they don't have to like, I mean, it'd be pretty messed up if there weren't any women's leagues because there was only like a basketball league and all men and women can play, but then women can't play because they can't compete with men. So obviously you separate the 2 leagues to make it so that women can play, within the league. But it was set up in a binary system, but now you have like possibly like a third, situation to put into like the system that was built in a binary manner. And I think society will figure it out, but I don't think that it'll be figured out like obviously within this 1 or 2 year time frame. And that's why there's this back and forth debate. Hey, how do we solve this? Hey, how do we solve this? And I think that, obviously through a lot of like debate, tough conversations back and forth and, whatnot, it will be solved. I would be very surprised if in like 5 or 10 years time, there isn't some sort of like equilibrium that's much better than what we have right now.
Yeah, no, I would agree. Yeah. And it's funny because I thought of the FABA thing as I was talking about it too. So it was cool that you mentioned it. But it goes back to like, what are we trying to optimize for? Right. I think to some degree, sports holds a very high place in American society, and that, we try to have a beginning to end, right? You mentioned like, youth development leagues that feed into, high school and college and what have you. And that's kind of like again, it's just, for me, it's like these 2 weights, right? And it's just about which one you have it's like 60-40, 70-30, like which one do you have on top of the other? I think but you have to be clear, I think, about which one you're going for. If you are trying to make a system in which people could go make a living off of this thing and throughout just like kind of keep climbing that ladder and see how far they can get. And here's the thing, I want to call out. sports in this way is also ruthlessly like, what is it? What's the right even word? Like the 1% make it through kind of like each time, you know? Like you know how many Division I prospects have just fallen out of the system because they got a freak injury on their draft year or something like that, or just you know, or even they get drafted and they don't even make the fucking starting team. Like it's just, you know, it's not like sports almost by definition, at least in this country, if we're talking about the one that like almost everyone measures against, like I want to be that, like I want some piece of that, you know, fame and glory and whatever. Like it's like, let's not let survivorship bias like get in the way. Let's not like let all this get in the way. It's like only for the few. It is like very hard to make that something that more accessible from an equity perspective, right? So, but I think whatever we can do on the opposite side of that, which is like I love sport. I think sport is so important to just maximize the participation, so that, you know, if it means having a FABA league where it's 5'8" and under, so whatever, I don't know, whatever it is, right? Like then trying to make that as mainstream and broad as possible. Like I'm all for it. You know.
Sorry.
Impromptu guest.
I literally waved my mom off because she looked in the door as if like, hey, can I come in? And I was like, no. And then she like literally walks through the door. Kind of funny. Right?
Yeah.
I'm good though.
So I don't know. Let's do this. Maybe let's try this exercise, right? I want to maybe let's see if we can practice our empathy muscle, even if we're gonna fail at it, right? Like, let's say you are a transgender person, and the first feeling is like you are just completely out of place. Like it's not even, you fit in nowhere. You see notions of the world around you and where you could go, but you yourself are like not in the right. Like your body feels alien and almost kind of like repulsive to you. And you start to kind of you go through that journey, you undergo treatment, and you're slowly starting to feel this sense of belonging and in alignment. Things are starting to feel right for you. And in this moment, you also want to participate in sport, right? Maybe let's just like work at it from that perspective. Like, I want to go play with you know, what's funny? Like it's contentious for the male transitioning to female, right? It's not the opposite. So, is that right?
So when I watched the Middle Ground yesterday, 2 of the 3 guests were actually trans men.
Trans men, yeah.
I don't know enough to talk about it. From my perspective, I'm guessing that the advantage that, okay, so for sure, I think going the trans women going from man to woman, the debate there is, there's an advantage here. So, you know, that even if you have transitioned, you still have inherent advantages. So competing against women is unfair. And since the system was kind of set up to optimize for fairness, at least like within this group, hey, like, you know, you're not competing against men, you're competing against other women here, then that's why this is a problem. I think that's the debate going one way to into becoming a woman athlete. It sounded like the trans men situation, I think they have to continue taking testosterone and stuff like that. And I'm not sure if that's the debate there, but I do think it's much less of a debatable or controversy, if that's the right word, going from women to men and then competing with men. I actually watched that whole Middle Ground. Was 20 minutes, and I can't describe that side of the debate.
But so I do wonder, right? Like if I were a trans man, you know, coming from as a woman, and I was like, oh man, I can't wait to like I love soccer. Even back when I was a woman, I loved soccer, and now I'm transitioning. I want to keep playing soccer, and now I get to play with men, was something that I've always wanted to do. But if we're saying that, like, let's just say that there are these irreconcilable different like physical advantages, right? That means I wouldn't stand a chance. And how would that make, like, what would I maybe advocate for if I was in that position? Maybe I start, I don't know, right? I'm just food for, like, trying to start a discussion here. Something to look into. I don't know anything. I haven't read anything about the opposite now that I think about it.
Yeah. Okay. So like, it's funny because neither of us know, but so in the middle ground, it was I think it looked like it was two dudes that it sounded like probably transitioned like a little bit earlier, so maybe they caught some of the male puberty. I'm not really sure how that works. Like if you transition earlier, perhaps I don't know, but it did seem like they had like I guess like issues, but it might have been issues with like fitting in because people were just like the stigma against like trans people in general or something like that. I'm not sure if that was the case or if it was something to do with I guess like what's fair and what are we optimizing for discussion. I like, here's the thing. I mean, I agree with you. Like for sure, sports is something that's like there's a reason that sports is almost like I wouldn't use the word sacred, but it's like, up there in terms of like, okay, what it provides you. Like even you talking about Muay Thai, for instance, is like a spiritual thing for you almost, And I think for a lot of people, like sports is like, that outlet. It gives you community. It gives you a state of flow. It gives you like, competition. It gives you like friends. It gives you like so much, right? And so, to empathize, like, if there's no place for, if there's no place for me, say as a trans person, to participate, then there's definitely something taken away here. There's definitely something taken away. Like, I would imagine, let's say today, somebody was like, yo, how you can't play sports for the rest of your life. No sports. And this is literally not even just like, I obviously have never been good enough at any sport to even like consider like a scholarship or something like that. So this is not even talking about like, this is literally just pure enjoyment that I get from playing sports. I think that would be very devastating for me as an individual. So I guess I can only imagine, from the perspective of, let's say, someone that transitions and let's say, they used to get this sense of community and flow and whatever you get from sports and that goes away, then what?
Well, so it makes me think about like Paralympics too, Special Olympics, right? And I watched it you know what? I have to admit, I watched it for the first time like 2 years ago. And it was awesome. I had no idea. I honestly had no idea it was like that. And even afterward, I looked up some of the athletes on YouTube and watched like these short, like 7-8 minute documentaries on their journey. And I was fucking crying, dude. You know what I mean? Some of these people had some crazy stuff and they're trying so hard. It's beautiful to watch. And like, to your point, they have a place, right? They have a place to actually prove themselves against other competitors, and have that be meaningful. And so, that's kind of where my head is floating around. So I'll leave that there. I'll just park that there. Maybe it turns into something, but there is another kind of thought-provoking thought that came to my mind as you were talking, which is, like right now, by and large, prosthetics are not better than the actual thing that you have, right? Like let's say a leg. But what happens when, let's say, like I'm a man, I lose like the bottom, like my right leg below the knee, and I get this new prosthetic that actually makes me a faster runner, like in a straight line. You know, am I like it's kind of different now. Like at what point
No, you can't run
these
you
supplements
can't
that
run
we
in the Olympics. Like there needs to be like
yeah,
a
right,
separate like category because like if I'm like
right,
basically like a I don't know, let's say I get robot legs and let's say the robot legs are just Elon Musk made them so they're damn good and I'm faster than Usain Bolt now, which I never would have been able to do
yeah,
otherwise, then I
right.
should not be able to have my little like, robot leg car thing, whatever. Um
Exactly. So where's that line, right? Because PEDs are banned, and if you look at the fringe of the banned substances list, some of them are kind of like natural, like you know what I mean. Like we talked about Adderall being banned as a substance without unless you had an exception. There are always artificial like things that you apply around that human athlete. Um,
it has to be like a nuanced like I guess like the sport like okay, so I do think every sport has a very nuanced like I mean every sport is its own nuance and it obviously has like a specific community around that sport and people that give a shit about that sport and care a lot about it. Esports for instance, even within esports there's like a bunch of different games and different communities within those games like basketball and Muay Thai. Every sport has its own like little like community and stuff like that. And I think it is on the community within that sport to to police things like that or set what that should be for it to remain competitive. Because let's say I cared a lot about StarCraft 2. I mean, they have their things in place to like, put up these competitions to make it so that people, like so people even when I'm not playing, I can like watch these competitions and watch like these Korean dudes that literally are just, like have like 400 APM, and I'm just like, oh my god, I can't believe that's so crazy. And I go back and play StarCraft, and then they, people put up prize money to make this like thing happen. And then even within the game, they build in like these seasons so that every and a season is probably a few months or every couple months or quarters or whatever, where they patch the game to keep it competitive, to make it so if somebody finds an exploit in the game, it doesn't just like ruin the whole game. It makes it so that it's still competitive and it's still worth like playing and watching and stuff. And of course, let's say like in NBA and stuff like that, and NFL, like they police for PEDs because I mean it probably wouldn't be that fun if everyone had to play, take PEDs. You know what? Actually, I take that back. It might be really fucking crazy if like they just made it open season on PEDs, and then like LeBron's just playing till he's 50, just like yamming on everybody. But I'm trying to say, like the people within that whole, how you were saying like everything feeds from even from youth level, like your 5 feeds all the way into like like the middle school AAU levels and high school and all that, all the way into college, all the way up to the professional, like this whole like system and hire, like somebody upkeeps that. Somebody, the community does that. And let's say for the NBA, I'm sure like they do stuff for AAU people and development all the way down to like the lower levels and stuff. So yeah, so I think it would be on the community and around the sport to decide how to keep it competitive within the essence of that game.
Yeah, I think that makes the most sense. I agree. It's so nuanced. It's so nuanced that like, yeah, it has to be up to like whatever little governing body that is. It makes me. It's interesting because, yeah, back in the 2000s, Pride Fighting Championship in Japan was basically your PED league. It was really fun to watch for that reason. You played infinite cardio and strength. But the other thing that came to mind to me, which is super popular right now, I mean, it's amazing how popular this has gotten as of late. But F1 is really interesting to me because there's no salary caps or anything. It's just whatever teams have the best budget and can throw the max amount of money, like, and make the best possible car and have the best possible engineers and best possible, like, everything across the board, right? Like, the budget is like a factor of 100x compared to like the it's
no, but that's
like
dope.
That.
They're
Some
optimizing
ridiculous
for
number.
probably the fastest fucking car. It doesn't matter how you get it.
Yeah, exactly. And so my point being that, like, yeah, that's not fucking fair at all. And I think that's part of the allure of watching F1, because you're watching these middle teams, and you're watching these it's three, right? There's like the top teams, the middle, and the low, and it's funny because the middle is the most interesting, because it's like not fucking fair at all, but somehow like sometimes the middle team like kind of scratches the surface of this, and it just creates awesome storylines. But like, it's not fair is what I'm trying to say. Like, if you want it to be fair, then that group, as you definitely perfectly pointed out, needs to create that fairness within the scope of that sport, within that vertical of like age or whatever, I can't see another way around it. But you could also make one that's like totally not fair, right? And that's the fairness of it, that there's no rules at all, like F1. So it's a bit of a non-answer, I would say, I think. But the point is, it's so complicated. I don't know. You and I don't know anything, as we've said a million times this pod. And that's probably where we conclude as well. So we don't know. Other people that know should, figure that out.
Yeah, I guess to empathize though, like as I was saying, and I don't think we got to this until the latter part of the discussion. Like, if somebody took sports away from me today, and it's not even like I don't even play it in a series. I play adult intramural leagues and shit. That would be devastating for me. So I think because of that, society will probably move into some sort of direction where there's an equilibrium that's better than what we have right now, but it simply isn't there yet. Like, it simply can't just be like, yo, we make this change, so boom, this is how it changes, because the system has been built up in a manner to optimize for fairness and competitive within two specific genders. And then now, there's a different variable that was never considered before. And yeah, I think over time that variable will get considered and get I guess absorbed into the system, and something will come from it better than what we have. And it's going to be like a lot of obviously controversy, debating back and forth, people that are, I guess, like pioneers that literally just go into it knowing that they're going to be going right up against a bunch of people that, are going to probably like some Jackie Robinson type stuff. You know what I mean? But that's what it's going to take. And then over time, I think society will sort itself out.
I agree. Yeah, I agree. And I think that's a good note to land on, is that, you and I are both really avid sportsmen, and 100% every individual should have a chance to have that expression and that connection to sport. But, I just want to say also, though, that I think it's good, and I don't mean to say this to take away from the social movements that are happening, right? In terms of trying to fold the minority into the mainstream. And maybe it's just my own personality, or maybe it's just my own identity, but I've never really wanted so badly to go to the mainstream. I wanted to figure out what I was, what made me me, right? And that's kind of the reason why I fell into Muay Thai. I tried all these sports, wasn't as good, didn't really click, did that for a lot, but just it hit a plateau, hit a ceiling, and it didn't want to push past a certain ceiling. And all of these things led me toward this thing where, in 4 years, I went from being untrained to fighting on TV in Thailand, right? It's magic when it hits, right? If you keep getting turned away from these clubs, that's a gift in itself for you to find something that's just going to be magical for you. You've seen people who just been absolute phenoms in surfing or rock climbing or skateboarding, right? They had to have not gotten picked in the basketball team or something. Okay, obviously there's these Bo Jacksons out there who are just fucking good at everything. But you know what I mean? Like generalize. So I think that that's one thing I want to put into the conversation, which is we should always fight for that, you know, that broad acceptance and equity. But like at the same time, like go find, it's okay to go off, right? It's okay to go off. So yeah.
Should we transition to our third topic or second topic?
Let's do it. Yeah. We got about 40 minutes left, so let's do it.
All right. Okay, I want to circle back to something I talked about. Was it last week or 2 weeks ago? I don't know. I think we were talking about. I forgot how we got there, but basically, I was asking if it's better to show up how you are as a person and fully express yourself as how you are and just 100% genuine. And I've always kind of like tried to lean more towards that, just be who I am, and whoever that attracts, you know, that's great. And whoever that repels, that's even better. Because, you know, if somebody doesn't fuck with me, then why waste both of our times? But then I think lately I was like, hey, I kind of want to show up how other people need me to be in a way. And that doesn't just involve, I guess it depends on how deep you want to take that statement, but obviously with friends and family and stuff like that. But maybe even like strangers and stuff, you know, if you want to extend that compassion to all, I guess, beings or people that you interact with in general. And but you can see why that's like a little bit of a clash, right? Like sometimes if you show up how the other person needs you to be, it might not be how you would normally show up, just like, you know, if you were just like being your full self. So I think last podcast or the one before that, we were kind of talking about that, and I wasn't sure where I landed with that. But then during the week I had a thought, and I was thinking that, and this still isn't fully fleshed out, so hopefully we could talk about it a little. I was thinking that compassion is the antidote that kind of bridges the gap on how you are as a person and how another person needs you to be. Because if you actually can see and feel and understand this other person, like from a slightly higher level of consciousness or awareness, then, and you truly have compassion for that person, then it softens up how you are as a person and it makes you more malleable. And then slowly over time, you become closer to, I guess, like something that the other person needs you to be. Obviously it's not instant, but I think it does like move closer. I don't know. What do you think about that?
Well, so what I think about it will be mostly me regurgitating stuff that I've learned from Ram Dass's lectures. And he talks a lot about this. A lot. But the basic premise is that, you know, we are sitting, the real we, right, is sitting behind so many different layers of ego, persona, identity, traumas, behavior, whatever, right? Like there's just all these things in the way, however you want to slice that out. But there is like a soul behind it, just to use, for lack of a better term, a real you, a you behind it all. And whether or not people are conscious of that or not, it's, I think, accessible. And if you can be, I think he argues that like what people need you to be is to be whatever, to basically be like a sense of nothingness, like in which if that, I think this is the way he says it, or if that person wanted to come up for air and play, you wanted to invite that soul to come out and play, that they could, right? That they could like let go of a lot of this stuff. And that doesn't mean to be passive, right? It doesn't mean to be like this fucking aloof, spiritual, like whatever, man, go with the flow kind of thing. It's actually still very action oriented. It's just that underlying everything you do, there's no ego behind it. And he has this one story, I think, of his guru, Maharaji, who taught him all this stuff. And as far as Ram Dass was concerned, Maharaji was a real guru. Like he like fully embodied living as a human, right? Continuing to be a human while being completely above it all, which is a paradox. And he tells this story of one time, like one of the guys who worked at the ashram, this like poor, uneducated Indian fellow, had like let these potatoes go spoil, right? And so then they didn't have potatoes to cook. And like earlier that day, Maharaji had like given this lecture on not getting angry. But then when he found out that like this guy let the potatoes spoil, he like fucking went into a rage and he kicked this guy out of the ashram. He was like, don't ever come back here again. Like, da, 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 right?
He was hangry, yo.
And then, yeah, Ram Dass was like so like angry at Maharaji. He was like, all right. I was like, who the hell does this guy think he is? Like preaching like no anger and all that stuff like that, and then doing this. Like, what the fuck? And then he approaches Maharaji later, and Maharaji just smiles at him and he's like, what's up? You know, it's like, why did you yell at that guy? And it's like, I think Maharaji says something, and I might be butchering this quote too again, where he's like, you know, do what you have to do, but never throw someone out of your heart, right? Is the quote. And so never put them out of your heart. And so I think there's like a softness and there's an expression of like discernment and judgment that you should offer to this person in that moment, right? But I don't know, and this is maybe the art behind it all, is that somehow behind that, if that person decides to like react negatively to something you said, did, or whatever, that if they tried to punch through it, there's actually nothing behind it, right? And that's kind of the way I'm been approaching it, because I can't say that, you know, that's something I do successfully, right? If I decide in the moment I need to act or say or do this thing to this person that I know is going to cause conflict, and they decided to punch back and they punched through that action or whatever, it hits something. It hits my ego. You know what I mean? But I get these intimations that like more realized people, if you punch them through, there's nothing behind it. And then you're just kind of left with yourself. So
that's an interesting way to put it. Like punching, that's like a way to maybe locate ego. If somebody can, I guess, like punch you and actually hit something, then there's ego there. I was just thinking when you were talking that Maharaj is just like this like regular dude, and he's just really good at justifying like shit that happens, and he's just angry. He's like, yeah, man, just as long as they're still in my heart, then we're good. And Ram Dass like, oh my god, that's so fucking woke.
Dude, so many of the stories are exactly like that. He's just
really
so it's funny
because
justifying
this shit.
Yeah. And I think Ram Dass would be the first to tell you that you can't fucking know it, like you, when you listen to Ram Dass speak, he himself, I mean, you listen to the guy over time, you're like, okay, this guy's the real deal. But he tells these stories about Maharaji that you're just like, that's the immediate reaction. And I think that reaction never goes away. Like, you just have to take Ram Dass's word for it. But he goes out there. He's just, you're just like, no, dude, this, like, I trust you. But this fucking guy that you're telling stories about, like, he just sounds like he's making shit up. And trust me, dude, I've listened to days worth of Ram Dass lectures, like, at this point.
He's probably making shit up.
So funny.
As long as the shit he's making up is good shit, then I'm cool with it.
Well, and Ram Dass talks about in the 70s during that time, was it Trungpa Rinpoche, the Tibetan guy? who would like fucking get fucking wasted on alcohol, and his followers wasted on alcohol too, and but like that was spirit, like that was the actual spiritual practice. And it's funny hearing Ram Dass tell the story because he makes it humorous, and he does a good job of being like, man, I don't know, like how can I know if he's real or not? Maybe he's just so real that that I can't even know how real he is. But he's like, but there is something there, but who the fuck knows? Or the guy with the Rolls Royces, I think he was an Indian guru. I mean, there were a lot of fucking charlatans in that period, like for sure. I don't want to whitewash how devious that period was with some scammers and stuff, but even if 1% of those fucking scammers that like were real, like wouldn't that be fucking funny? You know, like I don't know.
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't know where I go with this. So I raised my level of compassion so that I can, so that who I need to be is closer to who people need, or who I am is closer to who people need me to be.
Well, you still use judgment, right? Remember how we talked about step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, you know, when we were talking about like emotional control and stuff? I think you still exercise your judgment. Like when you give advice to people, right? When you feel like you need to intervene in a situation, right? Social justice, whatever it is, you still do something, but you're in control the whole time. Even if you know that like there's you're increasing the potential for bad outcomes, right? You're in that way, you're actually healing the karma of the world when you do it, right? Because you're throwing yourself into it. Like, so there's this store of negative karma that sits there, and someone has to actively burn it down, right? So that all of us can get closer to enlightenment. So if you are with someone you love or care about, and you know, because you've practiced equanimity and composure and presence, that, man, this is going to be a sensitive situation. I'm going to say this thing. They're going to be reactive. I better not be reactive. If you can come out of that situation, you've like raised the total like negative karma of the world down, right? The balance down. You don't have to. You can just sit back and not add to it, right? Do no harm is usually the first good ethical principle if you can't do anything else. But yeah, so it's tough. I can't say that I'm quite there, especially I've been having a lot of conversations, and people have been reaching me out to me because they've also are looking for advice on how to deal with their parents in old age and stuff. And I'm not there, right? Like I am fully egoic. I'm definitely adding to the karma. I definitely get emotional. It's like, you know, Dad, why are you doing this? Mom, why are you doing this? So
That's pretty funny.
Yeah.
All right, we have one more topic.
All right.
All right, so I guess I have to give context. So I've been going over to Shell's mom's house every once in a while, and she's like this super nice Filipino lady, and she obviously cares a whole lot about me. Very, very just like you can tell, she's like just this good lady that cares a lot about like the people around her. She cares a lot about me. She like prays for me and stuff like that, and she messages me every once in a while to check in on me. She's just like super like has a super nice heart, you can tell. And so I went over there to visit her the other day, and we're sitting around, and I noticed this like little there's like this little, it's probably like the size of a shop vac, like a smaller or medium sized shop vac sitting in the corner of her apartment or whatever. And it looks really cool. I mean, it's like, it's got this blue light, and there's like water like filtering through it and stuff like that. And so we were sitting there and we're just talking, just catching up. I hadn't seen her in probably about a month or a couple of weeks or something like that. And so, we're just talking, how's the family type stuff. And and her husband was there too, and we're just like kind of catching up and stuff like that. And she, so towards the end of the conversation, or what I thought was the end of the conversation, she was like, "Hey, I have a favor to ask you." And for Shell's mom, I'll mostly do anything for sure. She's so in my head, I'm like, yeah, sure. Like, what favor? Obviously, whatever you need. And she started telling me about that little shop vac that's in the other corner of the room. She's like, hey, you see that thing right there? So that's an air purifier. And I've been selling these, or like, so basically she tells me about this air purifier, and she's like, yeah, this thing is great. You would have no, like, the air quality in our apartment is so amazing now. Even when I cook like Filipino food, like fish and stuff like that, and it smells, I just, this thing, like, turn it on, and the smell's gone, and people are like, oh my God, I can't believe you cooked this in here and I can't even smell it, and stuff like that. And she's telling me how great this like air purifier is. And she's telling me that, like all about it. She's giving me like specs and stuff. She said, oh yeah, by the way, it's also a vacuum. And she shows me like this whole like big ass vacuum attachment that you can put onto it. So I guess the air purifier has like a motor that is super strong, so it pulls the air into this thing, but you can double that as a vacuum, and that's what they do it for. And so she's telling me all about this thing, and she's like, okay, so my favor is I need to do like 10 of these demonstrations at some point in the next 6 months, and you don't have to buy one, but if it's cool, I want to come over to your house and present this to your parents or whatever, because there's some, and it's important that it's my parents, because it has to be a couple and they have to own the house that they live in. So those are the two prerequisites for these demonstrations to count, and she has to do 10 of them. So basically she told me that, I don't know where she found the air purifier initially, but the deal is you buy the air purifier, and if you can get 2 people to buy it within 45 days, and also do 10 additional demonstrations within 6 months. So that's 12 total. So you're doing 2 presentations to get 2 people to buy in 45 days and an additional 10 within 6 months. Then you get to keep yours for free. And so in my head, I'm like, damn, this lady, she's part of this multi-level marketing thing now, and she probably doesn't even know it. And she fully believes it's like this amazing product, which I personally don't think is probably that amazing. But in my head, I was like, you know what? I'll probably just buy a shop vac off this lady, just to help her out. Like, how much did this thing cost? And so in my head, I had a number, and I was like, okay, if it's this amount, I'll pay for it, and it's fine. I don't give a shit. So the number in my head was $1,000. I was like, yo, if she needs me to buy a shop vac for $1,000, I'll just buy one. I don't even want to sit through the presentation. I don't want to waste my time with that shit. And so then I was like, hey, by the way, how much is the shop vac? Or like, how much is the air purifier? She was like, oh yeah, it's $3,100. And I was like, what the fuck? and I literally was like, all right, I'm not. First of all, I'm not buying a 3,000. I mean, she didn't ask me to buy one. She was literally like, I just need you to sit through the presentation, but it has to be your parents, can't be you. And also, like, if you can ask, like your brother and his wife as well, that'd be dope. So anyways, so she hasn't called in the favor yet. She just told me she needed that favor. And I was asking her all these questions to understand, like, this whole like little scheme. Like, cause it took a decent amount of back and forth for me to figure out, oh yeah, so you have to sell 2 of them within 45 days and you have to do 10 more additional presentations. But the presentations can't be just you. They have like official like Rainbow SRX dealers. So basically what happens is she has to get herself, like, she has to set up a dealer to come with her into one of her friends and family's homes, and the dealer and her together do this presentation. And the dealer is like, obviously like a professional salesman. You know what I mean? Like, and they push you pretty hard to try to buy one of these. And it's like a 2-hour, like, presentation, and both the couple has to be there for it to count. And they have like ways. I'm sure they have tactics to pressure you into buying one of these. And because I basically did some research after I went home, and oh my god, dude, I do not want to wish this on any of my parents or my anybody. You know what I mean? And I feel bad because she's in it, but she doesn't know it because she thinks it's an amazing product. But ain't no way it's an amazing product, because if it was an amazing product, you'd be able to buy this shit on Amazon. You wouldn't need to like, have like this super predatory like system where you trick like gullible people that are like, kind hearted, but obviously like, probably believes like whatever they're told, and then try to trick finagle yourself into their friend group so that you can go literally into the houses of their friends, but only couples that own their house. Like, your target audience now. And then you're going to be there for 2 hours, like trying to convince them, hey, your air quality is fucking bad, so you need to buy this 3,000. Like, what, you want your kids to grow up in a place with poor air quality, and then they have finance options and shit too. And the finance options are literally like, it's like buying like a small car or some shit. So yeah, dude, yeah, if you need 36 months, it's just $100 every month. That's fine, right? We got you. Yeah, you can afford $100 a month, right, for good air quality, of course. And I don't know, man. I'm just thinking about this shit in my head. I'm like, damn, this poor lady. I mean, I would honestly rather just give her money to help her pay off her. So okay, so I did. You know what she told me? She sold 6 in 2 weeks to her friends and family, including one to her son.
What?
And one to her I guess like her sister. And she was like, yeah, what's crazy is like, a lot of these people, they it's not like they're super well off. So to me, in my head, I'm like, okay, so these people can't afford a $3,000 air purifier. Most people can't, yet they bought. And she was like, but they bought one anyways because they saw how good it was. And I was like, oh my god, dude, you literally sold a $3,000 air purifier to people that can't afford one, probably because they got tricked into buying one, because everyone like trusts Shell's mom, because Shell's mom is the most genuine being ever, not a bad bone in that lady's body, and she always looks out to people beyond what's expected, for sure. So if Shell's mom's like, yo, this air purifier, and then she has like this like salesman that's like latching on to her to like almost like using Shell's mom as this Trojan horse to get into a trusted family and friend couple situation. And I don't know.
Yeah.
So anyway, so she wants to do this like little presentation, and I don't know how to say no. And I'm 100% going to say no, because I'm not, my parents would literally be like, who did you just bring into our house? So I'm 100% going to say no, but I don't know how to do it. You know what I mean? So,
yeah.
Sorry, I've been talking for.
But wouldn't you want to see your mom's reaction to this?
What are the chances my mom buys an air purifier? I should do it just to see my mom's reaction. But here's the thing: if it was just my mom, I think it'd be funny.
No, you need to save the moment. Yeah, the moment when the price tag drops. Like, I'm sure, like the pitch. There's no way the pitch has the 3100 coming in at a very strategic moment. I'm sure.
And right? It's like a finance
thing,
and it's like it gets you. Like they probably do some shit. Hey, go get your vacuum cleaner, and then watch how much dirt your vacuum cleaner gets off of this carpet. Let me do mine real quick. Oh my god, look how much dirt this shit left, and you're breathing this shit into your nose, and your kids are too. I can't believe that. It's so dirty, and you have like a couple and stuff like that. I would do it if it was only my mom, because she might think it's funny, or if she doesn't think it's funny, I would think it's funny, so that's worth it. But I feel really bad for my dad, and my dad would not think it's funny, and my dad would be like, "Why did you take 2 hours from me? I thought you were a good son."
2 hours, yeah.
But yeah, so that's where I'm at with that, and I don't know. What do you? To be honest, though, I'm very impressed with their business model. In terms of like, because if you think about it, okay, if somebody buys a $3,000 air purifier, they for sure win. There's no like that manufacturer. Like, I don't know how much it costs to make one of those, but they're printing money on a $3,000 air purifier. But even better, if somebody buys an air purifier and they're able to get 2 other people to buy an air purifier, and present it to 10 other like highly likely, like target audience, then that's
warm
even
leads,
better,
yeah.
dude. That's even better than somebody paying $3,000 for an air purifier. And also, I'm sure a lot of people think that it's super easy to sell these air purifiers. So they'll probably try, and maybe they only sell one, or not within 45 days or whatever the case. Or they have to go and pressure their friends. Yo, I need you to buy this like now because, like the 45 days is coming up. And so if you think about like this little system that I'm sure they've optimized over time, it's extremely efficient. Extremely efficient. And I don't know, man, but it's fucked up. But if you're just maximizing for like sales, and I commend them for building this out,
I don't know. I think there's a multi-level marketing subreddit. Maybe that's where you could ask for advice, because I think there'd probably be a lot of people with experience, and like, I mean, all right, maybe my mind just jumped here, but it's akin to kind of trying to convince someone that like their religion isn't real.
I'm probably not going to try to convince. I'm not going to try to convince her that this is a multi-level marketing scheme. I don't think. I just need to be able to say no and help her in other ways.
Yeah. Okay. Well, I mean, then that's just it. I guess saying no and explaining that. Or what you could do is you could say that. What you could do is you say that you could. You've experienced this before, like a similar thing, and it didn't work. It just wasn't for you. Like, in that way, you can kind of say, like, almost like insinuate that there's other things that are very similar to this that you did, without throwing like, yeah, this one could be different. Yeah, maybe this one is better than that one, and it's not like the others. Sure, but there is still some kind of a template just to plant that seed, Because if she comes out on the right side of this, and that realization hits, and you scrape up, you absorb the sunk costs, and you go wherever you can, like that realization will hit that, like, oh my God, this is a formula. Like, it's, you know what I mean? It's so engineered.
She's not going to come out of the right side of this one, I don't think. I do remember the first time I met this lady, when we were opening Teasing You, and this was like 6 years ago, maybe, but I didn't know it was Shell's mom at the time until she said, "Hey, I'm Shell's mom." But I was working in the store, and it was super busy, and she came through, and her first question to me was, "Hey, I have a question. I just bought this Gacha Matcha slushy, and I got level 2.5 sweetness, which is like still like 75% of the amount of sugar or whatever the hell we put in there. It's still in there. It's really sweet." And she's like, "But I'm diabetic, like 75% sweetness. We're good here, right?" And I was like, "No, if you're diabetic, you should leave my store right now. There's nothing for you here." And I was trying to tell her that, and she's like, "Okay, yeah, but 2.5 sweetness is good." I'm like, no, but and she like just kept drinking it, and obviously she's fine, but I just thought that was like super funny, and I messaged Shell immediately. I was like, "Yo, tell your mom to stay out of our store if she's diabetic. Like, please, I do not want to cause any issues here." And but then shortly after that, she came up to me again, and she was like, "Oh, by the way, I think it might have been Amway or some shit. She was trying to sell me some sort of products." And I was kind of like, and she was like, "Yeah, man, it's like great cleaning, products for your store and all that stuff. And not only could you get it for this store, you can get it for all your stores, because I know you guys, have a couple other locations and stuff." And I was like, "No, you know what? I'm good. Thanks, though." And I didn't really know her at the time, so like she didn't like press me or anything. But then I went back to Shell, and I was like, "Hey, man, I think your mom is part of some multi-level marketing thing, and you should probably tell her that those don't usually end well. A lot of times you buy the product and then you're stuck with them, or just the way it works is you have to build this like huge pyramid under you in order for it to even like make any sense. And most of the time you're just like kind of like selling these shitty products to your friends and family anyways." And then I think Shell was like, "Oh, it's just my mom. I feel like we've tried to tell her before, but she's just mom, so she'll just do what she does." And I was like, "Okay, cool." So I think it is a thing that's been like kind of like, you know what I mean? So
Yeah,
I'm not trying to.
I think
I'm not
it's
trying to
just
change it
damage mitigation.
because I don't think it's my
Yeah.
place.
Yeah, it's just damage. Right. Well, that's why I was talking about the seed angle, right? Like you're not trying to like that. I was trying to triangulate on like the lowest possible thing. That's not just like a flat no. Or I mean, because you still want to give maybe
So this is what I'm probably
some
gonna
kind of
tell her. I'm
reason,
gonna be
right?
like, hey, I went home and did some research on Google, and it
Uh huh.
doesn't
Yeah.
seem like this is for me because so based on their sales tactic,
I
I
have really good
really think
lungs.
that this is very predatory. You think I could tell her that?
Dude, you're basically no. Or I mean, you could, but that's what you said
Okay,
you
so
weren't
I have
gonna
to say,
do.
well, I for sure have to say no, and I have to give her a reason. And the true reason is, I mean, I
Yeah,
already
that's
knew
what I'm
that going
saying.
into it, when she was telling me all this shit. But when I actually did my
Yeah.
research, and I realized some of the sales tactics and all that shit they use, like for instance, they have a lot of people complain because they have 3 days to cancel. Otherwise, it's permanent. You can't uncancel. Like nobody has ever returned one of these after 3 days. Number one, but for a lot of these people, they don't tell them that,
Yeah.
and then so they go to return it
Yeah.
past the 3 days. I'm like, no, you're never returning this shit. Number two, for the people that did know, a lot of times they
Yeah.
reach out to the dealer, and the dealer is obviously super nice when they're in your house, but they dodge all your calls for 3 days.
Yeah.
So once they leave your house, unless you're willing to drive to their
Yeah.
headquarters, like whatever the area headquarters is, and
Yeah.
accost whoever is there and be like, hey, I'm returning this shit. It's within 3 days. You can't return that shit. They also try
Yeah.
to trap you with finance. Like you can't afford it, and a lot of these people obviously can't afford this shit. They're like, yeah, we'll finance that shit for you.
Yeah.
How many months do you need? Yeah, if you can afford you can't afford a $200 payment, but you can afford 100. Okay, cool. 36 months, fine.
Yeah.
Here's the paper. Sign this shit right here.
Yeah.
And they're using people's family and friends to get into people's houses and stuff. It's just like, I mean, for me, my goal would to be, look, here, if you need help, if you or somebody in your family needs help paying off one of these things, here's $1,000. I just don't want to sit in this demonstration. I don't know if that'll be insulting or whatever, but I'd rather do that because what are they gonna do? Just sell one to every single person that they care about? Like you can't cut it
Yeah.
off.
Man, I don't even know if money is the right thing here. I think you might just have to say it's just not like you're not about it, and then try to give as little reason, let her inquire and give as little.
Dude, I feel bad, dude, because it's not just her. Like her,
It's tough.
like
It's
Shell's
so
dad
tough.
was sitting there too, and he was like, "Yeah, man, it's
I
actually
know.
a great air purifier." And I was like,
Oh
and he was like,
man.
"Yeah, you can use it as a vacuum cleaner, shop vac." And I was like,
Yeah.
"Shit."
Yeah.
Wish Shell was here.
Well, yeah. Well, man. Well, best of luck, and looking forward to hearing how it goes. We can follow that up. I will say that throughout my life, I really mean this. Throughout my life, ever since I was a kid, and I was arguing with my mom about religion, or arguing with my mom about anything, I've yet to know how to crack this code of being able to gracefully navigate these situations where logic is not there. And I don't mean logic as this oh my god, it's so good to be logical kind of thing. It's just what was it? There's this quote where it's like, if someone doesn't value logic, how can you use logic to convince them of something, explain something, right? And so you have to use something else completely, and it's really foreign to me. I don't know exactly what that is. I would love to be better at it over time, do practice.
I
But
do like the analogy
yeah.
with religion that you made, like how trying to convince somebody, it's almost akin to trying to tell them that their religion isn't real. And the reason I think that's true is because usually once it gets to this point, you've already sold this shit to like, so many people that you care about. And so in order to admit that you're wrong at this point, then you're admitting that you just like, you just got all these family members to buy a 3K air purifier that they probably don't need, that they can't even afford. And so you kind of have to like, over the course of like, that experience, like, bringing salespeople to other people's house and like, oh yeah, just finance it is cool. Like, you have to lie to yourself, or not lie to yourself, but you have to have confirmation bias in the direction to make that action make sense. And then so you just pick, oh yeah, it's obviously really good. Yeah, it's obviously like a good air purifier. Oh yeah, like my house does smell a little bit better. You know what I mean? Like I can breathe a little bit better in this house. Yeah, I should totally sell it to more people. And so for someone to come in and say, hey, listen, you shouldn't do that. You're not just admitting that the air purifier like isn't worth 3K. You're also admitting that you just, you just burden your family and friends on a pretty substantial level.
Yeah, man, it's so sensitive, and I try, and this is where the compassion thing is so important. Like when you're talking about this stuff, right? I know the last podcast we talked about these like structures that people create inside. Like this thing is like a whole side wing of your structure, but it's not supported by anything, and it's just hanging off on the side, and you're getting like your friends to like add to it. And it's one that like, whereas like I think you could go your whole life, maybe like let's say religion, right? You could go your whole life and your faith is infallible, nothing has tested it, your worldview has not been shattered, but for this one it's almost inevitable that this thing will crash by design. Like that's what MLM stuff is that like the people keep scraping off the top and just like shit, like just basically shedding the people on the bottom, right? I don't know, it's very sensitive, man. It's a lot of hurt for sure that someone has to be willing to.
It's a very
try to take
impressive like system. I'm very impressed.
Well, so you know what's interesting? Scientology is basically this, but with religion. It's the same model, but with it, you have to buy your way into higher tiers and levels, and it's money based, it's MLM of religion.
Makes me want to look into Scientology.
Yeah, it's just like that, which is why you have like the Tom Cruises and Will Smiths and stuff. Wow.
Yeah, I guess I got to navigate this now. It should be a fun. This is my spiritual practice for the week or month or whatever it is. I feel bad, man. I want to I almost want to buy an air purifier, but there's no way I'm going to do that. I don't feel.
And think about it. That's how you feel. Imagine the weight, like with people who don't have as much distance.
Oh, dude, I was telling Min about this shit, and then I was like, "Yo, Min, you probably buy 2." So how many do you need me to buy?
Oh, yeah.
And Min was saying that too. She was like, "Yeah, like if your mom tried to sell me an air purifier, I will sign on any dotted line." You know what I mean? Because my agreeableness is definitely much lower than Min's. So we are.
Yeah.
So all you have to do is just present it to like 100 people, and then the people that are like top 25 percentile in agreeableness will probably buy one. Basically. Oh my god, dude! Oh. I don't know.
What if that was the next level of this scheme? Like you had your friends take this short Big 5 test, and then if they got like this score, you just like zero the fuck in on.
Oh, dude, I know. O's renting his house right now, so I'll be like, hey, he doesn't qualify, so you're gonna have to. Sorry, can't ask that. And also like
yeah.
Yeah. Damn it. This is really funny though. Bro. I mean, like, I honestly, like, I've been thinking about this shit like during the week just because I'm like, wonder what I should do here. Yo, when she told me that price tag, I was like, $3,000. She was like, yeah, but it's like really good. And then her husband was like, yeah, it was developed at MIT. So yeah, it's really good. And I was like, damn, that's crazy.
Oh my gosh,
She asked
man.
me if I had an air purifier at home, and I don't, but I told her I had a Dyson. Just because, like, I think Z had one of those,
Uh-huh.
and I saw it one time. I thought it looked cool. And she was like, oh, yeah,
Yeah.
Dyson is nothing compared to this. And I was like, damn, dude, Dyson, isn't that like top of the line type shit? I thought I just name dropped the best name
Yeah.
brand that I knew.
What if you try to reverse sell her on a different MLM product?
I'm gonna try to. I wonder what the most obnoxious MLM product there is. Sell her some Cutco knives or something.
You know what's funny? Cutco knives are actually apparently
Really?
people say they actually work. They're actually like not bad knives. Yeah, they're not worth it. They're not worth it by any, but they're not like shit. You're not
Right.
gonna be left with trash. Like
I wonder if this air purifier
that's what
is
I've
like
heard. Yeah.
worth more than I think it is. Like, I wonder how much it's actually worth. Like, let's say they were selling this shit at
Yeah.
like, I don't know, Home Depot or something, or wherever you get air purifiers. How much would it actually be going for? No way it's $3K.
Yeah. You're saying we went through this whole fucking global pandemic and we didn't see these air purifiers everywhere?
Is that
like,
why
saving
they
the world?
made? Yeah, I think this was out before then. But you're right. Like, I mean,
Yeah.
they probably were printing during the pandemic, man. These guys are probably like, oh my god, dude, there's that pandemic.
Oh yeah, business loan.
Like, do you want to get
business loan?
get
Let's
COVID
fucking
for your
fast track
parents that
these.
are old and at risk? I'm like, oh my, dude, I almost want to invite these people over so I could curse out the dealer in front of Shell's mom.
Oh man, yeah. If only that would have a good.
It'd have a good effect for me. I wonder.
Yeah. All right, man. Let's go ahead and wrap.
Yeah, I
wanna
appreciate
be,
that, man.
like,
I
over
actually
time
do have
here,
to be
so-
somewhere really soon.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Do we have a title? We talked about a bunch of shit today, and I feel like I was rambling for like at least 15 minutes straight.
Yeah. I don't know.
I'll think of something.
Yeah.
All right, great. We're gonna wrap, and this is the conclusion of episode 45. See you next week.